Diane Burko is a Philadelphia-based artist, best known for her landscape paintings of monumental geological sites. She has also been a longtime feminist and political activist. For the past 15 years, she has brought her artistic identity to the cause of climate change.
Burko immerses herself in nature's rhythms in specific places while constantly moving around the globe.
Collaborating with scientists to publicize the global crisis, and mobilizing art's unique power to awaken our senses to the perils that we face.
Her small paintings of particular sites, produced over the past 2 decades, express her experience of the planet as an organic whole whose stability is now under threat from climate change. In the unusual spaces of the American University Museum, most of the walls are curvilinear, which presents a challenge for the installation of large flat paintings. But these dynamic spaces also present an opportunity. The ground floor galleries that house the Burko exhibition are, in plan, like a spiral or a nautilus that circles back on itself. This means you see the beginning and the end of the exhibition at the same time. You can also follow it chronologically along the spiral path, which is how we hung the show, and we now invite the viewer to follow. So here we are at the entrance to the exhibition, and we're standing in front of the 3 large paintings that announce the 3 themes represented in the exhibition: glacial melt, coral reef destruction, and COVID-19. Diane has always been interested in maps and geographies, and she uses them not so much to inform you of where things are, but to express states of mind about these things. Diane, when you started to devote your art to climate change, how did that affect your art itself? How did you change your studio practice and what the kind of art you began to make?
First of all, I had to learn a lot more, didn't I? I knew how to paint, but I needed to really educate myself in these issues, because being a landscape painter, I understood the landscape, I knew how to define it, I knew how to travel to it. But the science of climate change was new to me. I mean, I knew about it in a public sense, so I did my homework, Mary. I started looking at a lot of different images, geological images, climatology images. And then my practice just kept expanding aesthetically, I guess. And that's why I really appreciated your putting that quote by Thomas Lovejoy right up there as we enter the exhibition. And I'm going to read it. The most effective alert to the threat of climate change is likely to come from the world of art rather than of science, because art has such an extraordinary way of cutting across human society.
Scientists inform, artists express. It's about the human response to what's happening, not the information that we are getting that makes us feel the things we feel.
True. It's about processing the data into my language. We're all contributing to this effort to try to alert the public to, the biggest crisis of our lifetime.
Could you tell us a bit about what being a photographer does for your creative process?
A camera, for me, is a way of recording. It's a way of drawing. It's a notebook. So when I first started using photography, quite frankly, Norma, it was that. It was a vehicle and a tool. What you have here is a whole row of investigations that had to do with glacial melt. They had to do with my trips to the Arctic and to the Antarctic. And then below here, you have examples of photography that I did from drones using a GoPro, and also just from my camera. Early on, I didn't even think about composing. But once I got into photography, believe me, there are a lot of other photographs I took. These are the ones that qualify as what you say is a photograph. A piece of art unto its own as a work of art. And photography is a work of art. Clearly, it's another one of the great arts, yeah. Now, the lenticulars, on the other hand, are a much newer medium for me, and I call this part of my time-based media that I've gotten into. And quite frankly, if I was born like 50 years later, I probably would be doing a lot more time media, because I love video and I love movement. But what the lenticulars allowed me to do is sort of capture movements still working on a two-dimensional plane.
That's right.
And I always thank Anna Tass, who was my collaborator, who knew everything about this medium, and I knew nothing, but I knew what I wanted. We just started experimenting together using baby oil, and then it was soap. And it's crazy. And we just kept shooting as an animation. And that began video for me. And then I did a reef video, and then working with Katie Supplee, who collaborated with me, and then Alana Ribbick was my other collaborator. Alana did the sound, and really we sort of worked off of what I already had done with the reef to make this ice melt video. So.
And one thing led to another, as
Exactly.
it always does in the creative process.
Norma and Diane and I all agreed that we wanted the exhibition to include not only her paintings, but her time-based media. The juxtaposition does something, as I say, quite unexpected. It introduces, in a very aesthetically exciting way, the idea of time. The mountains stand for us as symbols of stability, yet we know that the field around the mountains is changing, that the earth is beginning to show through. When we bring the video into play with it, time comes in more urgently. Things are moving, things are changing fast, and we have to think about what is happening in this kind of newly emotionally triggered way. But the speed at which the glaciers break off and calve is more like the video now. It's time that's happening faster and faster, and that's what this juxtaposition invites us to think about. Similarly, the Glacier Map series is also about this idea of time. The Glacier Map series begins with brighter colors, aquamarines, dark blues, whites, and as we progress along the sequence, the blues and dark blues take over and the white disappears until gradually we reach the panel where the artist views the earth from both poles, and the whole earth is dark. There are no more glaciers.
Well, the natural place for me to start was certainly with that glacier map, because glaciers is where I started when I got into climate change. And this whole series was sort of a culmination of that, starting with the glaciers. And it's fun to stand here with all these glaciers around me from different times. Norma, here we are, where we just left the cold ice, and we're in the Pacific, and we're dealing with coral reefs.
And we are standing directly in front of one of my favorites, your painting of the Great Barrier Reef.
The Great Barrier Reef, yes.
In Australia. Now, the way in which you juxtapose these gorgeous swathes of flowing color with occasionally
Death.
the dying coral,
Yeah.
wood that appears as collaged elements in your work. So there is this element of juxtaposition and surprise. You go from the beauty of it to the destruction of it.
This was the first one, actually, the first painting where I did introduce something, from the natural world. I got remnants of fan coral, dead fan coral. I certainly didn't kill the coral. And over there, we see sponges that also come from the ocean. Yeah. Those are shells that come from the Keys. So they were red like that. So that, of course, helped lend the whole idea of, adding that color to the painting. But of course, the other thing that added the color to the painting is NOAA Coral Reef Watch, which is showing the red as being the heat of the world that is heating up in 2014 to 2017, for instance. Yeah, I guess it's a bit of irony, actually, even though I sometimes don't say I believe in irony. But yeah, I am juxtaposing some realities, because that's the way the world is, isn't it? It's full of these positives and these negatives and these joys and then these sorrows. And so much of that, I think, in 2021 is like that, isn't it? In terms of the world we're experiencing.
You're really demonstrating to us what it is we're losing.
Well, we can still save some of it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, well, this was the first video. Remember I talked to you about the, and I wanted the circle because just like I wanted the circle and the lenticulars, I don't know, it's about the globe, isn't it? And it's also about the microscope, and you'll see later on, you actually see a confocal microscope images that I got when I was in Hawaii. And it's also about portholes.
Well, this whole experience of looking at the video replicates you as a diver looking down into the water.
So now we're moving from the coral reef section into a new realm, the third segment of the show, about what happens with global warming. As the world heats up, rising temperatures, accelerating change in all the systems of the Earth.
Yeah.
The coral triangle, in the painting you present this issue so clearly and vigorously, powerfully. And as we move along this wall, suddenly it's not about rising temperatures only, it's about the global pandemic. In summer heat, everything is happening at once. The causes and effects of climate change are crashing into each other.
Yeah, they are.
And this painting is really becoming quickly iconic. It's becoming the image of now.
Yeah, but you know, it's ironic, it's the image of now, but it's already yesterday. In March of 2020, we can all remember back to that, COVID was rampant, and I was aware of the map of the US on the news, and you know, there was New York, and there was California, and there was Washington, and you know, there was the map, but of course, it's also aesthetics. And yeah, at first I made the map, it was just that map, but that was too graphic, you know, it was too obvious, so I kept adding panels to it, and you know, came up with this painting.
As the planet has relentlessly warmed, Burko's art has responded with increasingly abstract and increasingly dramatic visualizations of the effects of climate change. These very abstract landscapes remind me of the popular catastrophe landscapes of the Romantic era in the 18th century, the kind of experience that resonates with the fearful and the threatening. This was an aesthetic response to art and to nature that in the 18th century was known as the sublime. But these canvases by Burko differs, it seems to me, from that kind of earlier historical experience, because the sublime today is an aesthetic experience that can no longer be separated from the actual dangers that we face in our daily lives as a result of climate change. Nor can we see these kinds of catastrophic, destructive events as something that is distant and beyond our control. We can't think of them as being an act of God or a result of the malevolent forces of nature, all things that we, of course, cannot control. Today, we know, however, that what we are experiencing is entirely within our control. All of this is our fault.